somewhere over the South Atlantic, as her plane winged its way to the G20 summit in Rio, Janet Yellen must have felt a chill run down her spine. The Treasury Secretary is not a woman prone to emotional outbursts, but she is a student of history. And as she gazed out at the endless, featureless ocean below, the Treasury Chief no doubt felt the whole majestic story of the American century flash before her eyes. For nearly a century after the close of the Great War, these were American waters, an American sea serving as the liquid conduit for an American-birthed and American-backed economic order. Across those vast expanses moved the cargo ships, passenger liners, and naval flotillas that represented U.S. commercial and military preeminence. On the far shores surrounding that ocean were arrayed the network of allies, client states, and military bases that formed the scaffolding for Pax Americana. Back on the home continent, the conveyor belts of Bethlehem Steel, River Rouge, and the other immortal foundries produced the sinews of industry, capital, and material to fuel American hegemony. Now, Ms. Yellen had to contemplate whether those glory days were drawing to an unceremonious close. In her own mild-mannered way, the former Federal Reserve Chair had become the Jeanne d'Arc of embattled globalism, marshalling international efforts to reform the corporate tax system, strengthen economic ties with rising giants like India, and maintain solidarity with traditional allies. But with the future of America's world role very much hanging in the balance in the lead-up to November's titanic electoral collision, Yellen felt compelled to issue a stark warning. A U.S. retreat from global leadership could have catastrophic effects from which the nation might never recover. Allowing Russia to trample the independence and sovereignty of a country that has done nothing to provoke an attack is something that threatens not only Ukraine, but threatens Europe and our own security, she told the press corps in unmistakable terms. An abdication of authority by the United States, Yellen continued, would undermine America's strength and position within the very international economic system that the United States itself erected from the ashes of World War II and the Great Depression. Those halcyon decades are remembered fondly as an era when America helped raise all economic ships through its steady implementation of open markets, collective security frameworks, and win-win economic diplomacy. Those pieties and more felt suddenly vulnerable in Yellen's remarks, which amounted to an 11th-hour plea for a course correction. A sharp U-turn back towards the America First isolationism espoused by Donald Trump threatens to burn the remaining bridges to the wider world irretrievably. Down that path lies only decline and economic decay as other powers like China move to dictate the terms of a new international order more amenable to their repressive systems. In defending the legacy of engagement that has defined the post-war status quo, Yellen found herself leaning heavily on a rather unlikely source, Vice President Kamala Harris. Vice President Harris clearly, deeply understands what's needed to make sure that families in America can thrive and can get ahead, she said, effusively praising the Democratic heir apparent in a manner that some saw as bordering on an improper campaign endorsement. In singling out Harris, whom Yellen credited with appreciating why it's important to restore U.S. leadership on the global stage, the Treasury Secretary may simply have been practicing some politically savvy portfolio diversification. Should the Republicans seize the White House, her own days would likely be numbered under a new regime skeptical of her Trumanesque faith in collective economic security. But more likely, Yellen's rhetorical elevation of her boss amounts to a heartfelt endorsement of Harris as the latest custodian in a great and continuing American democratic tradition. It is the second Madisonian tradition, the one summed up in the fourth president's own words. America was indebted to immigration for her settlement and prosperity, that she had been populated by people of distinct and separate interests and origins. Where Trumpism offers a pinched, atavistic version of America dedicated solely to the preservation of white, Christian cultural hegemony, Yellen and her inclusive economic worldview represent a more cosmopolitan tradition capacious enough to welcome the contributions of the entire human diaspora. For all the unease roiling domestic politics, Yellen's Brazil stopover was a poignant reminder that the United States still possesses a deep reserve of soft power on the international stage. Amid the polarization and alienation, she calls on an older civic faith, one that sees America as the diverse but unified seat of a global community of free peoples bound by collective economic rights and duties. Toward what higher end could the raw hard power of past centuries be directed? What truly distinguishing legacy could more fittingly summarize the world-straddling American imperium than a just, wealth-creating international order upholding inviolable human freedoms? It is that regenerative, ennobling vision that Yellen now fights to defend with every careful bureaucratic exhortation and each fervidly whispered world financial communique. Out over the fruitless brine, The Treasury doyen could perhaps make out the far green shores of Rio's fabled beaches, bearing a faint promise of human renewal. But between here and that distant haven stretches an ocean of blood, tears, toil and sweat, the eternal waterway over which America has long sailed, but which now risks receding into myth if the present American imperium lapses into self-defeat.